Hey everybody, Sebastian Maniak here. So today we're going to be talking about context-based routing itself, which allows you to route requests to a different backend based on the content of the request body itself, not just the header or the path, because as we are aware that your traditional, your standard gateway APIs are only looking at the path and the header, right? The body itself is invisible. And this is particularly useful for LLM applications where you want to route to different providers based on the model itself. So that field inside that request JSON. And AgentGateway solved this with 2 steps, right? So before anything routing happens, a transformation policy reaches into the body itself and it grabs the model that and pulls it out and stamps it inside the header. So we'll have the header and it takes that model, X model, and that's really our first step, right? It takes that model and stamps it inside the header. Step 2, right? Now that it has the header, we're just gonna create your regular HTTP route itself, and we're gonna match it based on what we wanna do. Do we wanna match it to a GPT? Then it goes to OpenAI. And we can also match it if it's maybe a Claude model, right? We send it to our Claude itself, right? So 2 real steps, right? And if you want to add Gemini or a self-hosted model, it's really the same pattern. All we're going to be doing is adding another, just one more rule and really one more backend in it. So why don't we go ahead and let's dive into the demo, and I'll show you how you could do this on your laptop inside of Kind or inside of a Kind cluster using AgentGateway. All right, let's jump in. All right, so let's jump into this demo. The code and all the steps that I'm going to set up here is all going to be provided inside of the descriptions below. So feel free to check out the repo and the code. But it's pretty simple. We're going to execute this step-by-step guide for us to be able to test out context-based routing and also deploy this inside of your Kind environment. So for this demo, I am going to be using Kind. So this will run on your laptop, your machine, as long as you have Kind, Docker installed, Helm, and kubectl. You'll need 2 API keys. I'm using OpenAI and Anthropic's. I already put those inside my environment variables. So to start, I'm going to issue Kind create cluster, and I'm just going to use AGW series as my name. We'll be using Kubernetes 1.34 in here to spin up our Kubernetes cluster. Next step is we're going to install the Gateway API CRDs with a quick command here. As you can see, this will define the resources that we're going to use, like a gateway or HTTP route inside of this setup process. Now to install AgentGateway, we're going to need to install first the AgentGateway CRDs. Here's the Helm command. These will define the backend or AgentGateway backend, AgentGateway policies. And then we need to install the AgentGateway control plane itself. So once again, we're going to be using Helm to deploy this. It only takes a couple seconds to deploy it. Now let's verify that AgentGateway is running. So we're going to run kubectl get pods. Everything looks good. And the first thing we need to do now that we have our Kubernetes environment deployed, we have AgentGateway installed. Always the first step is we're going to create a gateway listener. So we're going to listen on port 80, and we're going to accept routes from all different namespaces. The next step is to take those API keys that I have stored in my environment variables, and we're going to create API keys, or we're going to store the API keys inside of Kubernetes secrets. So here we're going to build one for OpenAI and Anthropic's. Step 7 is to create the backends. So we'll need a backend itself for OpenAI and for Claude. So we're going to use AgentGateway backend to build this. And as you can see, we're referencing the API keys or OpenAI secret in this instance of the config And we're going to be doing the same configuration for the Agent Gateway backend. Now, the next step is to create that model extraction policy, right? We're going to be using that cell expression to extract the model that's inside the JSON body, right? And we're going to set it as that X model in the header before we do the routing. So this is where we actually create that extraction model and extract it itself, or what we're calling it as that transformation itself, or pre-routing phase inside the config. So here's the configuration. Take a look at it. And not only can we do models, we can take anything inside that body and pull it out and insert it into the header however we want using Agent Gateway. So now that we've done that, the next thing we need to do in the final step is to create content-based routing, so HTTP route. So we're going to define two rules, one that is going to match GPT for OpenAI backend, and one that's going to match Claude for Anthropic's backend. So very straightforward. Two rules we're going to match. So if it's ChatGPT, it goes to OpenAI. If it's Claude, it's going to go to Anthropic backend, of course. And we can see that the routing, or content routing is what we call it, is that HTTP route is deployed. So now that we have this configured itself, when we make a post call towards whichever model or LLM endpoint, based on the model, we're going to extract that, and HTTP route's going to match that, and it's going to route it to the appropriate backend that needs to. So with this, I have a test that we can just test this out. And there's a test.sh script that's pretty straightforward. We're going to make two calls. On the left-hand side, we're going to see requests. On the right-hand side, we're going to see responses. The first thing we need to do is port forward that port 80, so that gateway listener that we have. And what we're going to do is run our first test. We're going to send a request towards our Agent Gateway, and we're just going to say, hey, say hello in one sentence. And we get a 200 response back with the model we selected. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is working for us. And we're going to just do another test to ensure that it's working with Claude. We're going to send another post request to Claude with the message and the content and the model. And we're getting a 200 OK back. We see that we got, Claude responded with us, hello, it's great to meet you too. Perfect. That was it. It's pretty quick, pretty simple for you to be able to deploy content-based routing. And like I mentioned in the Lightboard session, that if you have other models like Gemini or ChatGPT or Anthropic or local models, all you have to do is create the backend and add that HTTP route for that content-based to be able to provide content-based routing for yourself. So if we kind of take a look at what we covered today, that extracted model request from the body, right? We routed GPT requests to OpenAI. We routed Claude requests to Anthropic using that under one single LLM endpoint, or one endpoint itself, and having multiple providers, right? With 0 client changes, because when we make that call, be it if it's a curl call or the app or the client or your agent is calling, we don't want to change that deployment. We want to provide it with one endpoint and have the Agent Gateway decide how it routes or where it routes to itself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, of course, drop a comment below. If there's something you'd like to see next, let me know. I'm always open to ideas. And like we have it here, smash that like button, hit the subscribe, and make sure to star us on GitHub. Check it out on github.com/agentgateway. See you next time.